Hi, I'm Martin Ludden, Executive Director of the St. Paul Neighborhood Network. We are here live in the Kwame McDonald studio at SPNN with Angela Casselton, Executive Director of the Creative Enterprise Zone. Angela, welcome to the forum.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So we are actually right now sitting in the Creative Enterprise Zone.
You are.
As SPNN is part of that area. Can you, what are the bounds of the zone?
What is the geography?
Yeah.
So the best way to think about it is South St. Anthony Park. So
Okay.
there's North St. Anthony. South St. Anthony is a largely industrial area with a growing residential population that goes basically from the rail yards to the north to the south, past Vandalia Tower to 94. When you go east, you go to Pryor. Sometimes we like to fudge it and go to Fairview with some funding opportunities. Otherwise, you're going west to Emerald, which is really where Minneapolis and St. Paul meet, which is west of 280.
Gotcha. Cool. So that's a big chunk.
Yeah.
It's a big zone.
Yeah.
And so how did it come to be, and what is a creative enterprise zone?
Well, we like to say a creative enterprise zone is a place where people make their living by their creative capacity. And roughly 10 years ago, maybe we're going on 12, when light rail came through, which was welcome to promote development into the area, there was displacement of a group of creatives that were working out of the Chitman Eastman building, which is right in the University and Raymond area. So when the light rail came through, a developer bought the building, turned it over into apartments or lofts, and so there was displacement. So our founder, when Catherine Reed Day, when she was driving by or got wind of this, they were out on the boulevard, they were protesting, and so all of a sudden her awareness as a creative, as a practicing creative in the neighborhood, was aware of this unfortunate displacement. And so working with the St. Anthony Park Community Council, who continues to be a good partner to us today, there was a group that was an offshoot of that conversation. They identified over 300 studios, maker spaces, creative entrepreneurs in the neighborhood, and really sort of identified that uniqueness to this particular area. I think prior to light rail, you would have seen mostly industrial buildings, 100-year-old family-owned businesses. This area is a transportation hub that grew up around the railroad. And so to understand that there were buildings in this neighborhood that housed creatives, probably the most well-known one is the Dow building, where you see the Dow Gallery. And so by identifying this, there was a need and an understanding that they needed these creative spaces needed to be protected. Right. So we now have, through a course of 10 years and various iterations, have sort of cemented our work around attracting and I'm gonna forget this all of a sudden.
That's all right.
Is working with the creative community and really attracting and supporting them in the way they need. And that falls into some various program areas.
So I think so I grew up going to church at St. Cecilia's. And when I come from where I grew up in Matt Groveland to St. Cecilia's, I was through this neighborhood all the time. And you wouldn't have known it unless you knew that all these old industrial buildings were full of artists.
Yes, you wouldn't know.
Yeah, and so with the zone, I think...
You may still not know.
Well, right. But so I know when I started here at SPNN, there had already been some displacement in this complex, and I've seen more as I've been here. And we're moving, at least in this part of the zone, it seems, from maybe individual craftspeople or artists to more, I think, what you would call creative entrepreneurs. So can you talk a little bit about the breadth of practice that is creative in the zone?
We define creativity quite broadly. Just understanding that products and businesses have origins, and somebody somewhere along the way is brave enough to make that happen or try to make their living. So we do define it quite broadly. So it can be makers, it can be light industrial, it could be a nonprofit organization like Urban Boat Builders that is working with the youth and producing product, or Deneen Pottery, which is a family-owned business that's making hand-thrown pottery quite successfully. So there's a lot of different ways of defining it, but understanding that people are working, living, and playing here, and we really just want to recognize what that means and how we can do it together.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And I think, when you use the word creative, I immediately go to like advertising and marketing people, but it's also, yeah, like you said,
We
boat
have a few of
building.
those too.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a few, and there are a lot of photographers around. But I love the thought of like, yeah, boat building, pottery, like and even light industrial, like you're making something, you are creating.
We have people making soap. We have people making candles. We have people with their floral arrangement businesses and event spaces, and the list goes on. There are certainly a number of artist studios. There is artist housing as well, but we don't know what's going to be made here next.
Yeah.
I mean, Brotex has been making cleaning supplies for years, but now has expanded their complex to include creative studios. So things are evolving and changing as new people come to the neighborhood, and we're happy to welcome some of the Twin Cities' leading arts organizations.
Yeah.
Some that have already been here, a lot of performing artists and the dance studios, and now a couple other big names coming
Who else? Is there anybody coming in that you can talk about, or is this
We're
still
super excited to
closely held?
welcome the Playwright Center,
Yeah.
Minnesota's Playwright Center. They were attracted to this area, understanding that it was still undergoing change, but that that idea that creativity exists here. Obviously, being located on the light rail is a benefit.
Yep.
We're happy to see Film North expanding their capacity by ownership. We actually encourage ownership wherever possible. We're very committed to local ownership of buildings.
Yeah.
We understand the value of that.
Right.
And so I'm sure I'm missing a few, but the list just keeps growing, and so we're super excited.
I think the Playwright Center was the one I was thinking of, because
Yep.
that's a big project that's been a long time in the works. I
Yes, and I think they've had some recent good news. So.
think. Yeah, fantastic. Well, we will look for that.
Yes.
You talked about a couple different program areas. So how do you, I suppose, other than getting the designation of the zone, like what is the work that you all do?
Yeah, and I should say thank you to the City of St. Paul for recognizing the Creative Enterprise Zone as this geographic district and the nonprofit organization that is behind it. So our work really falls into two key program areas. Some would say three, but it's technically two. We have real estate development and public space. And by real estate development, what we're talking about there is really leading the conversation and action around community ownership.
Okay.
And so the idea that we are supportive of development as long as it doesn't lead to displacement. We don't want to see a repeat of what happened before, but we also want to encourage development. There is benefit to people coming into the community and investing in these buildings and making them more user-friendly and more accessible. So there is value in that, but we really want to be able to keep space affordable, which is not
Really
an
hard
easy
to
issue
do.
to solve.
Yeah.
But we think there is a way to do it through community ownership and looking at the long game and not talking about a short-term investment or asking an arts organization to do the investing and sort of carrying it by themselves, but really looking at, could a community investment cooperative buy a building? Could they support it?
Yeah.
Can we talk to people who have buildings in the area that have supported makers and ask what their long-term plans are? What does their succession look like? And so, that's really important to be in those conversations and to really be able to leverage opportunity. So we don't have all the answers, but we have some definite ideas around that.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to public space, so probably our most visible public space project has to do with the Chromosome Mural and Art Festival, which we started in 2019 as a way to create identity. And so when I say not everybody knows this is a creative enterprise zone, there's a lot of marketing to still happen, but we like to move cautiously and sustainably. And so the festival really came together as an opportunity to acknowledge the creativity happening inside our walls and move it to the outside.
Yeah.
So it resulted in large outdoor murals, public art accessible to everyone.
Right.
And really developed through a partnership with Forecast Public Art, which has been an arts leader for over 40 years, and in the creative enterprise zone for probably just as many, maybe not as many. And so we're really proud of the fact that we are working with a local arts partner on that. And so and I can talk more about that later, but the other aspect of our work in public space is really about improving our streets, not in a way that a community council does, which deals with transportation and housing and those sort of things, but rather through identifying that we have one of the highest heat indexes in the city.
That makes a lot of sense.
Because you have all this industry and all this asphalt and all this cement. And so we have a distinct lack of trees to sort of offset that heat. And so we are out there literally planting trees on boulevards. Now we're watering them, which is a long-term commitment. But that's sort of exciting. And that's one of the projects that really engages our community because there's a lot of people concerned with green. We have our community gardens, which are fantastic and a very key part of the structure, the infrastructure of greening. And so we're super excited about that. But we also look at opportunities for public space and gathering. And that's more of a long-term project, but identifying spaces that could be conducive, identifying pathways where we can develop gathering spaces. But for now, we're starting with one tree at a time.
Yeah.
Or actually, technically 100 a year.
That's way more than one at a time. And it's really been cool to see, like I said, I've been in this neighborhood for years, and to see the explosion of murals has been really cool.
I know.
And the one that, because I drive by it every single day, is the gas station on the corner of
Cleveland
and Wabash.
Wabash.
Yeah, and it's this weird like brick rectangle.
I
It's
know.
just been there forever, and now it's got a gorgeous, I think, a dragonfly mural on it.
There's a cicada.
A cicada, yes.
So that is one of my favorites for a couple of reasons. And I can't say I have favorites because everybody,
Of course
they're
not.
all great. But I like the origin stories of the murals. And what I love about that one is our creative partner, I work with Teresa Sweetland at Forecast. We had both really been enamored with that gas station because one, it's a gas station that was a very nondescript building and was actually in pretty rough shape. And so, but it just sat there on the corner and it just begged for a mural. But it was in tough shape. So I called the building owner and I said, I'd love to do a mural, but it's in tough shape. And then we had COVID and all of a sudden I'm driving around the neighborhood and it's not in tough shape anymore. They did some work. And I thought, that must be a signal that I'm supposed to call them again. And so I was able to connect with them, and Aaron Johnson Ortez came and did the mural in 2021 as part of the festival. And it's absolutely stunning. It is transformative. It connects people. People would stop. They would screech their cars to a halt. They would come over to Aaron. They say, I have been buying gas here for 40 years. This is so amazing. And so the only sad part of that story was when you go north, you get this amazing view. But when you go south, it's the way the building is angled, there's nothing on the front. So I'm happy to report by the end of this summer that Jennifer Davis will have a mural there.
Cool. Yeah, it's funny you see like people stopping, and like it does, in a way I hadn't really thought about. Like it puts a smile on your face when you drive by it. And it's not that you were like frowning when you drove by it before, because it was just a non-entity. But now you're plus a smile.
It's joy.
It's great.
I do think that's important. And the other thing that's really important about the festival, with our emphasis on engaging and employing, because we pay all artists, is mainly to look at BIPOC and non-binary and women artists is very important, as they have not been represented historically in a lot of mural festivals. And so I love being able to offer a wall as a canvas for someone else's story. And I think that's also another unique position about the festival, is really allowing artists to create what they want to create. Too often it's commission, I understand that, but we try not to put parameters on it and just say, what is your heart saying right now? And so it can say many things. And so those unexpected moments of joy, those moments of contemplation, some are very deeply personal, some are just simply beautiful. So we hope that every time you turn a corner in the zone, you'll find something new.
I like that. If you are just joining us, we're here in the Kwame McDonald studio at SPNN talking with Angela Casselton, the Executive Director of the Creative Enterprise Zone. And we were just talking about the Mural Festival, and I want to come back and just put a fine point on the fact that you pay your artists. So pay artists.
Always pay artists. Their work has huge value and brings a lot back to our communities.
And it's work.
It's
work. Creative work, but it's labor, and they should be compensated for that.
Sometimes it's more work than they anticipate.
Most things are.
But that really is part of the joy at the end. And what we really have seen and hope to continue is that a lot of these murals can be a launching point or can be a real pivotal moment in an artist's career to say, I can go big and I am worth engaging. So we hope it launches more murals around the world.
I want to come back to a term you used because I've got a question about it. You talk about community ownership of buildings and spaces in the zone here. Does that mean that you are hoping to have owners that are of and from the community, or does that mean you're looking for a more communal ownership model?
I think it can be
both.
It can be both.
Okay.
So I think similar to what other organizations have done and done successfully is we are forming a community investment cooperative. And that's where you ask individuals to come together, pool their resources, pool their funds, to then identify, in our case, we very much are committed to buildings in the creative enterprise zone, as a means to, you're not looking for a huge return on your investment. It's not a typical investment. It's about wanting to see that building exist, to continue in the way it was meant to be, and really investing in that community as an asset. And so that is definitely one way. But we have some great building owners here that we have relationships with, that we can have conversations about how they can make spaces affordable and be successful. We also love when businesses can buy their own property, because that is where the vulnerability comes for, as you know, and as many arts organizations know. If you're not in a long-term positive, beneficial leasing relationship, you are very vulnerable. Your building can be, there's nothing to stop your building from being sold. But where we can encourage and help businesses own their own property, that's when they really can decide their futures.
And that's, there's real financial stability that comes in that. But it's also, like, especially when you're talking about creative industry, like, there's a psychological security in that too. To know that, like, I am in a place that will continue to be a safe space for me to be creative.
Right, and it's just like home ownership. It's very intimidating to even think about. It doesn't even seem like in the realm of possibility for many. But I think that's one of our jobs, is to figure out what that looks like and how we can move the needle on more community ownership or local even ownership, because you see so much coming in from, so many investors coming from outside the market. But we have a great team. We are developing a real estate brokerage service, we're happy to report. So that really is about having a relationship with not only the building owner, but also the tenants, and really trying to create a good, solid relationship and some stability for both sides. Because the building owner benefits, the creative business benefits, and people can build their businesses together, and it doesn't always have to be at above market rate.
Yeah, well, and that's really it. It's, let's build this business together. Like, I want you to keep owning this building if I'm leasing. So that we can keep doing our thing.
Right, and development is inevitable and change is inevitable. So really being proactive and having conversations and identifying buildings that are at risk is important to us. Deals will be made and they happen all the time, and then sometimes we're always like, oh. But, being more open and transparent about what our intentions are is helping us have conversations. It helped us acquire our first building this last December by asking, by being in the conversation and saying, what are you doing and how can you work with us? That's kind of key.
Well, that leads right into my next question, which is, what's your headquarters situation? Like, does the zone own a building? Where are you at?
The zone owns a building. So through some amazing connections and bold thinking, our board chair, Renee Spillum, was able to negotiate with Sunrise Bank to acquire, with a third party, the old Sunrise Bank location at Vandalia University. So if you've stopped by to try to deposit your check, I'm sorry I had to turn you away. It hasn't really been a functioning bank for at least a couple of years.
Okay.
And what was really exciting too is we were able to, because of Renee's background in real estate, was able to also help broker the arcade location as well. So that went to 30,000 feet, I think is the name of the arts organization. So
what is the arcade location?
Oh, the Sunrise Bank's arcade location on Arcade Street.
Okay.
The east side.
Yeah.
the very fast, wonderfully developing East
Yep.
Side.
Very cool.
So
I didn't realize that had been a dual deal.
that was a dual deal.
Yeah.
And so we have hung our shingle that we're still working on making it look like us. It still pretty much looks like a bank.
Looks like a bank, but
Yeah,
that's
but we share the space with 2 other nonprofits. And would I say it's the building we thought would be our first purchase? No, but it's the one that came and was and came together, and so we're super proud of what we hope is the first in our portfolio.
right. Well, and like you have to be open, if it's not exactly what it looked like, or
Yeah.
what you thought it might look like.
It's
still,
okay if I'm not shoring up, building, or, doors or, anything. It could be like many other buildings.
Right. This one's solid.
Yes, this one is solid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
we're
and it's
super
yours.
pleased and couldn't be happier with the location because we're just down the block. So.
Yeah. Well, and we will have more close collaboration for it. I'm sure.
Exactly. Yes.
Can we pivot to you a little bit? Like, how long have you been? How long has the zone been an actual nonprofit, and how long have you been in the leadership role?
So I think it's going to be over 10 years. So really, somewhere in those first couple of years when construction was happening on light rail, they formed the nonprofit. I can't tell you the exact date. And so I came on the scene in late to 2018 to help fundraise for the festival. I had a background in sponsorship and events and marketing and all sorts of mishmash. But so a mutual friend of ours recommended me to help Catherine and Jack Becker, who was at Forecast at the time, help sort of raise the funds for our first festival in 2019. And back then it was conceived as 8 days in the fall, and it was this mad dash we were able to find the money and then do the festival, and we couldn't have done it without Forecast Public Art, and Burlesque of North America was another partner, and it was amazing, but it was fast, and it's taken all this time to sort of catch the neighborhood up because sometimes things just happen that fast. So we were all set to do the same thing in 2020, and COVID happened, and so we postponed, and then I was missing that connection that the murals were creating, and I was afraid that we would go another year without them, and we didn't know what anything meant. But we had some funding from a couple foundations that we were able to leverage and still do murals during COVID, and it was kind of magical because people couldn't be together, but they could be with their families, they could walk, they could bike, they could drive around and do this COVID-safe, public art tour, and so. It was magical for the artists that painted that summer, and then it led to this understanding that to be sustainable and for an organization as small as ours, is that we could do it over the summer. And so since in 2021, we launched in May and we conclude in the fall. And so we're doing the same again this year. We launched in May, and at the end of the summer, there'll be 11 more murals.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember experiencing that through that COVID summer, to be able to drive around when you're not really seeing anybody.
Yeah.
And to see artists working,
Sometimes 6 stories.
yeah, and to see generative things happening in the middle of what was a pretty dark time.
It
It
was.
was really that was really good for the neighborhood, and I think good for more than the neighborhood too.
Yeah, it was scary and hard and really special. And so we celebrated that year with an outside open house. And again, just being able to see people, even if at a distance and outside. But great work came out of it. One artist, I know it was her first mural, and that was really special and magical. And for one artist, it was that moment to do what he wanted to do. There was a lot of pressure for him to do a lot of different murals post George Floyd. Yeah. And so it was just really healing to be able to say, this is the narrative I want. This is the narrative that I want to present, and being able to present it. So,
so you
I have the best job.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it shows in the way you talk about it, which is always fun.
Yeah, I get a little teary sometimes, so I have to back off and I'm not gonna cry over that one.
But I mean, I do the same thing, and that's because the work we do is important, and we care about it. But so I want to note, and then we'll pass by it, that I asked you about you, and you pivoted to the festival. So
I'm very good.
I'll follow your lead on that.
Yeah.
Because I think are we coming up on kind of an event around this year's murals?
Yes. So we're winding down a summer, though we have still a couple more murals to go.
Yep.
There are actually murals working right now. hopefully. And so we will conclude another summer of mural making with a closing weekend, which is 2 days, September 30th and October 1st.
Cool.
So on that Friday night between 5 and 8, we're just going to crawl around the Raymond University area. You can get out, walk the streets, see at least 9 new murals in that area from 2020. I can't say we are personally responsible for all of them, but we welcome all creativity. And so we will have some art stops. So it's a crawl with some art stops, and there are some murals that are further out, so we'll just have a little bus to run you out to them. And then Saturday we conclude with more bus tours and a bike tour and some activities, live painting, and a closing party and artist talk at Can Wonderland.
Cool.
So really over at the Prior Works building, which is another amazing, huge, gorgeous warehouse building full of creative makers and businesses, and so that's really, there's some good beer over there too.
Yes, there's a lot of good beer in the Creative
There is a
Enterprise
lot
Zone.
of good beer here.
That is a creative enterprise as well.
Yeah.
So if people want to find more information about the murals, about the zone, about this real estate work, what's the best place for them to go do that?
Yeah, so there's a couple websites, but Creative Enterprise Zone, all run together, .org is really where I'd like people to start, because we have added a lot of information about how to visit, what's all here. We can't, of course, cover everybody. There's so many amazing nonprofits here, but really have a list of resources to how to navigate the neighborhood. And then also our Chromosome, it does connect to our Chromosome or Chromosome Net website. So you'll be able to start with Creative Enterprise Zone, find us at Chromosome. So
cool. Well, Angela, thank you for your time today and
you.
for your work in the neighborhood that SPNN is a part of,
Great.
the Creative Enterprise Zone. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity, and I'm super pleased you're here.
Thanks for the conversation.
All right.
We have been here at SPNN in the Kwame McDonald studio talking to Angela Casselton, Executive Director of the Creative Enterprise Zone. Please stop back and visit us again. Thanks.